What's going on, everyone? I want to talk about something today that I've been wanting to make a video on for the longest time. I'm going to be talking about Ed Gein, the Plainfield ghoul, the butcher of Plainfield. Ed Gein is one of those names that stands out far beyond any other when you talk about serial killers and true crime. Ed Gein is just in a league of his own. Some people say, like, he is the one name that a lot of people refer to when you ask them what really got them into true crime and horror, what got them interested in it, what's the one name that really gave them that morbid curiosity. Usually you'll hear the name Ed Gein, if not mentioned first, at least in the top 3. So this is the guy who inspired movies like Psycho, Silence of the Lambs, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is my favorite. It's my favorite horror movie. I did a video on that, and I say why. But these movies have nothing on the real life Ed Gein, the real ghoul Ed Gein. And we're going to talk about his life today. We're going to talk about the things he did. So let's get right into that. A little bit of backstory about Ed Gein is that he was the youngest of the Gein family. He did have an older brother who was about 5 years older than him, named Henry. Their parents, George and Augusta, were not your role model parents, to say the least. George was an alcoholic who couldn't hold a job and would beat the kids on a regular basis. And their mother was a very religious zealot type of person, but I don't know if you could even call her religious. She was more just like a nut. She was just like, very unhinged. She had this idea of herself as like God's gift to the earth, basically, where like she shunned everybody else, and she said that all women were prostitutes except her. She wanted her kids to shun everyone and look at the world in that negative way, the same way that she did. She taught them very violent passages from the Bible. She emphasized those passages and probably misled them in a lot of ways, but she was very controlling of them. And Ed, he kind of gave into that, and he idolized his mother. I guess his morbid curiosity and her domineering nature and the things she would tell them and just the way she would act towards them, it led him to want to be closer to that. And he really just idolized his mother. He was like the ultimate mama's boy, basically. Henry wasn't that way. Henry was a little more down to earth and realistic, and he saw through the facade of their mother and saw that she wasn't the virtuous angel that she tried to portray herself to be. He saw her faults, and he tried to warn Ed as they got older. And Ed didn't like that very much. He really did not like when anybody talked ill of his mother, especially, I guess, when his brother did. His brother did end up dating a woman who already had a kid from a previous relationship. I'm sure this didn't sit well with Augusta, their mother. But Henry did start dating where Ed did not. And Henry was worried about Ed. He tried to warn him about his mother, and he tried to get him away from her, like his attachment to her. He saw it as unnatural and unhealthy. And one day, they were lighting a brush fire on their property in Plainfield, on the farm that they lived on, and Henry went missing. Ed said that he lost Henry in this brush fire, and he ran to police and organized a search party, and hours later, they went looking for Henry. Now, the thing is, Ed said that he didn't know where Henry was, but when he got this search party together and got the police, he led them right to the body. That was red flag number 1. Red flag number 2 is when they found the body, he was face down in the mud and had bruises on the back of his head. He wasn't harmed by the fire. He didn't die by the fire. They didn't do such a good job in examining the body, even though they saw these marks on his head and he was face down. They pretty much chalked it up to him dying of natural causes. It wasn't until years later that he would be a suspect in his own brother's death. And this comes shortly after his brother, starts telling Ed that maybe this relationship with his mother is not so healthy, and starts telling him that she's not the person that she portrays herself to be. So it's speculation. There's no concrete proof that Ed did kill his brother, but like I said, it did come out years later that he might have. So what we do know is that Ed confessed to 2 murders. Although a lot of people think that Ed, that there were all these bodies and all these murders, he actually only confessed to 2 murders and was only charged for 2 murders. Most of his crimes were actually bodies that he dug up, or at least he claims were bodies that he dug up from graves. So some of the things found in the house were like very macabre things, like bowls made out of human skulls and human body parts everywhere, made into furniture, made into clothing that Ed would wear, to like a woman's suit that he made himself. Like that's where you get the Buffalo Bill making suits out of woman's skin and Silence of the Lambs, and the furniture and everything in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like these are things that Ed actually did in his home. Ed did say that he went on about 40 nighttime visits to 3 different cemeteries where he dug up bodies. And he said that when he went on these nighttime trips into the graveyards, that he was in like a trance, like a dazed trance kind of state, where he didn't really understand or know what he was doing sometimes. So, and he said that most of the time, at about 30 or so of those trips, he would break out of that trance and he would find himself digging a grave and then cover it up and just go back empty-handed, go back home empty-handed. Now, he did say that he only robbed about 9 graves. So the body parts found in Ed Gein's home don't match the number of graves that he says he robbed. They actually exceed that number. And one particular item, well, a few of the same kind of item found in his home were vulva of woman, the genitals of women, and 11 of them were found. 2 of them being suspected of belonging to girls who were about 15 years old. So the thing is, as I said, Ed only confessed to 2 murders and he was only charged for 2 murders. The first murder that Ed was actually committed was a woman by the name of Mary Hogan, who died on December 8, 1954. She was a tavern owner, and one night while people were drinking at the tavern, Ed waited outside until everybody left and she was about to close up. He walked in, and when she told him she was going to close the tavern, he pulled out a gun, shot her, and dragged her body to his house about 7 miles away on a sled. So Ed says that he went into that trance-like state at this point, and he didn't know a lot of details about her death. They did find Mary Hogan's skull and her face in Ed Gein's house, among other things. But so that's just one thing that he said he didn't know all the details of what he did. So it leads me to think, did Ed really understand everything he did when he went to these graves? Did he even understand or know if he killed other people? Because like I said, the vulva of the females found in the house exceeded the number of graves that he says he robbed. So that's just something to think about, right? Also, one of the, although he's only charged with 2 murders, he's suspected of 7 more. And at least one of those was a girl named Evelyn Grace Hartley, who was 15 years old. And she disappeared on October 24th, 1953. She disappeared, it was about a year before Mary Hogan's death, is when Evelyn Grace Hartley disappeared, and Ed became a suspect in that disappearance as well. And also a girl by the name of Georgia Jean Weckler, who disappeared on May 1st, 1947, and she was 8 years old. So this is around the time span of when Ed was committing his crimes, when he was grave robbing and committing murders from 1947 to 1957. It was about a 10-year span of him doing these things, and these were just 2 more of the suspected murders and disappearances connected to Ed Gein. But again, only convicted of 2, only confessed to 2. The second was Bernice Warden, who was a hardware store owner, and her murder was the one that actually took Ed down. Her murder was the one that they were able to finger Ed as the suspect and finally find all the evidence linked to him. So Bernice Warden, like I said, was a hardware store owner. He was in her store one night, and her son, who was a sheriff's deputy, was there and recalls that Ed came into the store the night before she went missing, the night before her murder, and Ed was there and was asking for antifreeze. He wanted to buy some antifreeze, and he said that he would return the next morning for some. He did return the next morning, and witnesses saw the hardware store's pickup truck leaving the store at around 9:30 a.m. The rest of the day, no one was able to get into the store. It was locked, and it's always said that this wasn't odd to people, as it was deer hunting season, and this was kind of like a normal thing. People would shut down because, people were busy out hunting deer, so there, wasn't much business going on, so they would close their stores early. But when she didn't come home, when it got evident that she was missing, they did remember. Well, her son did remember that Ed was there the night before. They did find a receipt in the store. The last receipt of the last thing sold was a receipt for antifreeze. This is what reminded her son of Ed Gein, because he remembered that he was there the night before asking for antifreeze and said that he would be back the next morning to buy it. So what happened was Ed went back to Bernice Warden's hardware store, and there was a rifle on the wall. He knew of the rifle there, and he had a bullet ready in his coat with him when he went back to the store. He asked her to see the rifle, and she gave it to him, and when she turned around, he loaded it with the bullet that he had in his pocket and shot her and stole the truck and took her to his house. When they arrested Ed, they arrested him at his neighbor's house, who he used to babysit for, and then they searched his house, and this is where they found Bernice Warden, in Ed's woodshed. Well, they found her body without her head, and she was hung upside down. She was hung by her hands and feet, like an animal carcass would be. Again, remember, this is in a town where everybody's familiar with hunting. Everybody has done it. This is a regular thing for them. They're pretty much all skilled at it. And he showed his skills on Bernice Warden and eviscerated her body. He had her hung upside down and emptied out like a deer would be after being hunted. So that's not where it ended. Obviously, they went into the house, and this is where they found all the items that are listed in Ed's house: skulls on bedposts, human remains everywhere, human skin suits, lampshades made out of human skin, all kinds of things. A belt made out of nipples. I mean, again, this is the mind of madness. This is the true mind of madness. His imagination was just running wild with these body parts and the parts of corpses and people he murdered. Inside the house, they did find Bernice Warden's head in a burlap sack, and her heart in a plastic bag. Now, another thing is, Ed is suspected of being a cannibal. When you talk to people about Ed Gein, a lot of people will tell you that, of course, he was a cannibal. That's something that people always say about him, and a necrophiliac. However, these things are not actually confirmed. It was never confirmed that he cannibalized anyone, although it seems very likely. And as far as the necrophilia, Ed says that he never had sex with any of the dead bodies because they smelled too bad. Although his house was full of dead body parts and bodies and was a rancid place. His house was just in shambles, except for the rooms that he boarded up that his mother used to frequent. These were the only rooms that stayed in pristine condition, very clean. They were boarded up, and he never went in them, never used them. Only in the rooms, and mostly in the kitchen, which is where he stayed for most of his time. It was just very squalid conditions. Some of the kids who he used to babysit for in the town They would tell stories of shrunken heads that Ed Gein had, which obviously turned out to be human skin that he took from corpses and probably other living victims. So this is the story of Ed Gein. Now, another thing is, did Ed Gein work alone? You know, a lot of people say that Ed Gein went to these graves and he dug them up, but people, you know, police started wondering if Ed could dig all these graves alone, if he could do all that by himself, like pretty much dig up a whole grave in one night without being seen or being caught, without any help. So Ed did say that he had some help. He did say he had an accomplice, at least one, a farmer only that everybody only knew by the name of Gus, but was never seen or anything. Supposedly he was a little elderly, and he might have died at, you know, a little before Mary Hogan's death, and some people suspect that that's when Ed started killing people. If Mary Hogan and Bernice Worden were his only victims, his only murder victims, I should say, because they say that Gus, the farmer that helped him dig the corpses, died and he had no help. So now he looked to getting the parts that he wanted from living people, from living bodies. So that's just a little something that a lot of people don't really know about, is that Ed might have had help committing his crimes, or at least the grave robberies, not so much the murders. So that's going to be it for this one. Like I said, this is something that I wanted to touch on for a long time. Again, Ed Gein is one of the names that really stand out when you talk about serial killers, true crime, or horror, and for good reason. Again, he's the mind of madness and depravity personified. And I guess there's a little bit of that in all of us who have that morbid fascination of looking into these things. Although we don't want to glorify what these things, what these people did or anything like that, and I'm not doing that, but we do have that morbid fascination and interest. At least I do. So with that, I'm gonna end it there. I hope you like this one. Give it a like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Pretty good.